Yo, what is up YouTube? It's Easy Game here. Finally getting to that Devastation Evoker guide that I've been promising the chat for about a month now. For those of you guys who don't know me, I am Easy Game, notorious multi-classer in the rated battleground scene. Also have some pretty decent experience in arena as well. Currently the #1 rated player in rated battlegrounds right now in the Devastation Evoker. Had my fair share of struggles trying to convince everyone that the spec was good in RBGs, and what do you know, everyone thinks it is now. Haven't queued much arena this season yet on Devastation, but I did just get done with the queue session prior to recording this video, and we did get up to 2600 MMR, so doing pretty good. Probably push up the Glad wins here soon, and who knows, maybe even go for a rank 1 push towards the end of the season. But yeah, that being said, let's get right into the guide. First things first, we're going to get into the talents here. I really don't change the right tree at all. The only thing you change here is for arena. You take out if you're not going to be cleaving with your Eternity Surge, if it's like a double caster team or something like that, you don't really need to hit 2 people with these abilities, so you take it out and you put it into Catalyze. It gives you more ticks on your Fire Breath, which gives you more Living Flame procs, so kind of a no-brainer there. You can also spec into Charged Blast maybe. I don't really like it, but definitely an option, or you can also spec into Shattering Stars 2 seconds longer if you're into that, but you'd have to take it out of something else. But like I said, I don't really change the right tree at all. In RBGs, you always play Eternity Span, don't ever play Catalyze. Maybe a flag map you could, but I feel like Eternity Span just gets a lot of value, so I wouldn't really swap it too much. The left tree, on the other hand, you do change this quite a bit. Oppressing Roar is really powerful in arena and in RBGs if you can coordinate it. So usually I drop something for Oppressing Roar in certain situations. Sometimes I drop Fire Within. Sometimes I drop, yeah, it's really hard to drop things here, but you do have to drop things sometimes. Sometimes you could drop Time Spiral as well if you don't need the mobility, if it's like a double caster team or something like that. I think Inherent Resistance is really, really good versus almost everything. They just buffed this recently. I believe it was like 4%. I think they doubled it, or so. I'm not really sure exactly what they changed, but they definitely buffed this. But if you're playing against the rare occasion where you're playing against a pure physical damage team, you could drop this. But in general, most classes deal magic damage for majority of their damage, even melee. So maybe if you queued into like Warrior Hunter or Windwalker, Outlaw Rogue, stuff like that, those are pretty much the only pure physical oh, Feral Druid too. Those are pretty much the only pure physical damage classes that you don't really want this. But other than that, you're going to get a high value out of taking 8% reduced magic damage. In RBGs, this is pretty much how you survive, in my opinion. These two right here gives you so much like passive damage reduction that it's really hard to not play with these. So yeah, what I usually do, if it's like a certain map where I can get some value out of the Nox, I'll spec into both Nox here, dropping some points into like this. You can drop Time Spiral there. You can also drop 1 point out of here and to get that maybe and lose just a little bit of magic reduction. You can also take out the Leech. Sometimes the Leech isn't very valuable if it's like a burst comp in 3s, or even in RBGs the Leech might not get very much value. But yeah, on like an Eye of the Storm, you would take this and then you would take Swoop Up, so you can swoop off like priests and stuff like that and knock them. Pretty good value there. As far as 3s goes, Time Stop, very valuable in 3v3 versus setup comps. Like almost anything with a sub rogue, you're going to want to take Time Stop. You can pretty much stop an entire go on your teammate, and it's only a 45-second cooldown. So pretty powerful defensive there for you and your team. In RBGs, I don't usually play Time Stop, but you could, and you could possibly save somebody in a go. Scouring Flame is one of the highest value honor talents in my opinion, especially in RBGs, because every Flame Breath that you charge up, you're purging, you know, 4 to 5 people or more of at least 2 buffs or even 1 buff, right? But the value of this purge is insane, very underrated in my opinion. And whenever you tip the scales, you know, that's 4 buffs gone from the whole team, as well as doing like your burst rotation at the same time. So I pretty much play Scouring Flame whenever I can. The other option here is Obsidian Metal, gives you an Aura Mastery whenever you wall. I usually play this on flag maps where the purge doesn't really, it's not as important generally, because I'm not going to be hitting a bunch of people with it. I'm just going to be hitting the FC and maybe a couple healers or a couple DPS, and I also just want to have high uptime with my damage on the FC, so Obsidian Metal gets some value there. Also like an Arathi Basin where people aren't clumped up on top of each other. I'm not going to get much value out of the purge either. Probably going to hit like 2 people max, right? So it's good on that map as well. And if you pair it with Nullifying Shroud, you can wall and guaranteed get your Nullifying Shroud off. They can't kick it. They'd have to stun you or somehow micro CC you in the process, but These two together gives you a lot of uptime and stops a lot of CC that would otherwise hit you and interrupts. Another thing that's very valuable, especially in RBGs, even in Arena, certain comps, Chrono Loop. This is insanely good versus DH tanks in RBG. You can Chrono Loop every single glimpse when they're trying to glimpse across the map. It also works against Guardians when they try to flap across the map. And basically what will happen is if the DH glimpses and they're flying, right? They're about to glide across the entire map with their glimpse. But if you alt Chrono Loop the glimpse, they're going to return to the spot where they were and they're going to float straight to the ground. So they're not going to get any distance from it. So it's really good for chrono looping the flaps and the glimpses and stuff like that, because they just, like I said, they just fly straight back to the ground. They get no distance. Also, if they're low, you can chrono loop them, and then when they get topped off, you know, they come back. But a lot of people are aware of this now, so they dispel it. So I pretty much mostly use it just to stop glimpses and any kind of distance. You could stop rescues, you could stop life grips, you could stop any kind of distance that the DH gives. Sometimes I try to just use it on their, when I know they're gonna like leap away, right? So I'll try to just hit them with it right before they leap, and then they leap, maybe even double leap, and then boom, they're right back. No leaps left. They're pretty much sitting duck at that point. As far as arena goes, you can use this against like holy priests if they're usually like Ray of Hope, maybe even like R druids. If they get low, you can chrono loop them before they trank, and then, you know, they come out of the trank and they get chrono loop back to their health. But generally, I don't really like chrono loop in arena that much since the nerf, but like I said, you could play it. Definitely a viable option. Other than that, you don't really change much. Unburdened Flight is pretty much mandatory at all times for Dev. The best defensive of this class is just being able to move freely with hover, and without Unburdened Flight, you can't do that. So don't ever spec out of Unburdened Flight ever in any bracket, in my opinion. This is pretty much what makes this class the class, in my opinion. Honestly, this shouldn't even be an honor talent. It should just be baseline, but it is what it is. So just don't ever spec out of this ever. Now I'm going to go over some of the basic rotation here without your burst, right? You pretty much just want to use Shattering Star on cooldown, Eternity Surge on cooldown, go for the Flame Breath here. If you're playing Scouring Flame, you do want to charge up the Flame Breath as much as you think you can get away with. You don't really want to get kicked on it, but it's not a big deal if you do. So I usually don't charge it fully, but I try to get like maybe 2 to 3 on the charges, and then when that's down, you pretty much just disintegrate with your essence. Use your living flame procs as you get them. Sometimes I like to hold one if there's like something I might need to kill, like an observer or a totem or a Siphene or something like that. I'll try to hold on to one of my procs just so I have an instant cast to kill it right away. I don't have to waste a disintegrate on it. But yeah, this is generally it's a very simple rotation, really. You just want to make sure you get your Fire Breath and your Eternity Surge out there, because the way it works with this talent right here, causality, is that every time you channel a disintegrate or use a pyre, it reduces the cooldown on your empower spells. So you want to get your empower spells out there, and then you want to channel, right? Lowering the cooldown, yeah. Use your essence bursts, lower the cooldowns. So here we go, boom, they're back up again. Another thing you want to work around here is called Iridescence. Casting a power spell increases damage to your next 2 spells the same color by 20%. So I'll show you how it works right here. Put this up, and then boom, cast Eternity Surge, and I have this buff right here, Iridescence Blue, right? So this actually gets consumed by Azure Strike. So generally you don't want to consume this with Azure Strike, because Azure Strike doesn't do as much damage as Disintegrate, not even close. So you want to try to get both of these on Disintegrate, but there's going to be times where maybe you can't because you don't have enough essence or you don't have any procs or anything like that. So I wouldn't worry about it too much, but you do want to, it's definitely preferred that you use 2 disintegrates on it. It also is consumed by Shattering Star, which is kind of the same deal. You don't really want that. You want it to get consumed by Disintegrate because that's your highest damaging ability. And then for the Fire Breath one, it gives you for Living Flame, pretty much the only red spell you have, right? So hopefully get procs, and I just got a proc there, so I just consumed them both. Sometimes it's hard to consume both of the red ones, but you know, do your best to get your Living Flames out there. Just hope you get 2 procs basically, or hard cast 1 if you have to. And that's pretty much the deal with Iridescence. And then let's go over the burst rotation here now. So what you want to do is get Shattering Star on 2 people, hit as many people with your deep breath as possible, especially in an RBG setting. It's very important to get big deep breaths. A lot of times it's going to get revival. There's some kind of cooldown on it, but it's only 1 minute cooldown, and most defensives, including revival, are less than a 1 minute. So eventually you're going to get that big deep breath that'll wipe a team or get you that kill in arena. So lining that up is very important. You also want to be careful about terrain. You know, it kind of reminds me, I use this analogy on my stream a lot, but it reminds me of when you're skateboarding. If any of you guys have ever skateboarded, you know, there's a little pebble in your way and your wheel just hits it just right, hits you with that wedge, and you just go flying. That kind of reminds me of deep breath. If anything's in your way, you just can't press it. So you want to try to make sure you're like angling it at a way to where it's not like hitting a pole. I've also found that like double jumping and gliding before you press it generally helps to not have like the error occur to where you can press it. So I try to like a lot of times I'll try to just double jump before I press it like that. Get it out there. The width on it is pretty big, so you don't have to hit people directly with it. And it'll still connect with the stun and the damage and stuff like that. So don't worry about just like getting a straight line. Just try to hit as many people as you can with it. And then as far as Dragon Rage goes, usually I try to get Shroud up before I press it. I kind of messed it up here a little bit here, but then you go boom, boom, and then Eternity Surge. If you want to pair the burst to hit at the exact same time, you can Eternity Surge into the instant Fire Breath. But the problem with that I've found is that if by some reason you do get kicked on the Eternity Surge, you can't press Tip the Scales. So then you're kind of just like sitting around for a little bit, basically waiting for the lockout to Tip the Scales Fire Breath. So I usually like to Tip the Scales Fire Breath first and then Eternity Surge, just so that never happens. But, you know, if you don't think you're going to get kicked or you have wall up, you can definitely go the other route for the instant damage at the same time for the maximum burst. Alright, so another thing I want to talk about is the Dragon Rage extension. So this all stems around this talent right here called Animosity. Casting power spell extends the duration of Dragon Rage by 4 seconds. So what you can actually do with this, let me show you here, is I press Dragon Rage, I have 17 seconds. I press Fire Breath, I get 4 more seconds. I get another 4 seconds. And during this window, you want to cast as many Disintegrates as you can, because you can actually get another 8 seconds with the resets on your Empower spells. So as you can see here, I'm just ripping my Disintegrates. Obviously this is a lot harder in a real setting because you get interrupt like that, but look, there we go. Boom, I got another 8 seconds there. Generally, you can't get another one. Maybe in a PvE setting with Lust and PI, maybe you can get another set of resets, but I'm not really sure. I don't really PvE that much on this class. But in PvP, you're pretty much never going to get another round of resets. 16 seconds is the max you're going to get. But it's definitely a huge damage buff if you can get that extra 8 seconds at the end by resetting your cooldowns again. But sometimes, you know, if you're getting CC'd or kicked, you maybe not be able to. And it's okay if you can't, but you want to definitely try to get that extra 8 seconds out at the end with another reset of those Empower spells. Another thing I forgot to mention, a lot of people ask me, how much should I charge up Eternity Surge and Flame Breath, and what should I use Tip the Scales on? So charging up Eternity Surge doesn't increase the damage it does. All it increases is the number of targets hit. And it initially starts off at 2. Most of the time in a normal situation, you're not going to hit more than 2 people with this anyways. The range isn't that big, it's 12 yards. But there are certain maps or situations where maybe you might want to charge it up to 2 or 3 and hit more than, you know, double it to hit to 4 people, or even 6 maybe sometimes. But generally you don't want to use Tip the Scales on it. You always want to use it on the Fire Breath, because especially if you're playing Cleanse by Flame, because you get all those purges and stuff like that. And plus the burst on it is just much higher when it's fully charged. Now we're going to talk about the defensives a little bit. It's going to be short because this class doesn't have very many of them. Basically, like I said before, your best defensive is just being able to move. You know, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee type of thing, right? You can move around, you can position, you can channel the Disintegrate, line of sight, avoid the cast back, come back out, you know, bob and weave, bob and weave. Honestly, that's, in my opinion, that's the best defensive that Dev has, is just being able to move around, kite, melee, unslowable, a lot of movement on this class. But then your actual defensives is Obsidian Scales, which is a 30% wall for 12 seconds. You have 2 charges this. A lot of times this isn't enough, and you kind of have to pair it with Renewing Blaze. If they press, you know, if both players in an arena press all their offensives, you're going to have to probably pair both of these, or maybe a healer cooldown with one of these. You can also spec into Foci of Life, not sure, Foci of Life, I don't know about the pronunciation here, but you spec into this, and it makes Renewing Blaze a lot better on its own, so you don't have to pair it with the walls, but it does have a longer cooldown, because this reduces it by 30. So you could do this. I think this is good against like any rogue comp or any setup comp where they're just going to kill you quickly with high burst. You can definitely play this and it'll help. And then one of the most underrated defensives in the game is Rescue, in my opinion, but I can't really showcase it right now. I'll probably play a video above this that'll show you some rescue plays in RBGS and Arena, but obviously I can't press it since I don't have anyone to rescue. But it's mostly because of this talent right here, Twin Guardian. So whenever you rescue somebody, you both get a 30% shield of your max health for 5 seconds, and that's a lot. 30% of your health is a lot, and it's on both of you guys, right? So this is very good for saving your teammate, saving yourself, and also just for movement in general, because the range on it's pretty far, right? So this range extends both directions, right? So let's say the guy I'm rescuing is behind me, I can rescue him from this far behind me to this far ahead of me. So the range on it's pretty big, very good at saving your FC, very good at saving a teammate in the arena, saving yourself. Yeah, Twin Guardians is pretty much mandatory in my opinion. Don't ever spec out of this. It's one of your best defensives. And rescue is only a 1 minute cooldown, so you have this every minute. Very strong defensive. And that's pretty much it. This class doesn't really have much defensives. So now I'm just going to go over a few little tips and tricks and nuances about the class that maybe you might not know about and a lot of people don't abuse. But one thing I like is this talent right here, Recall. This is one of my favorite things about Evoker. So I can do this right here. Go in. You actually have 3 seconds to recall, or actually it's a little bit longer. So I can press a few globals here and then boom, right back to where I became. So what I like to do with this in RBGs and arenas is I press it. I weave in a few globals, or you know, if I don't think I can get the globals off, like if I think I'm gonna get hard CC'd and I don't have trinket, I just spam it to get out immediately. But if I think I can weave in a few globals, let's say I have shroud up or something, or I have trinket, I'll try to weave in a few globals, make people turn around and like, oh hey, let's hit this guy, look at where he's out of position, and then instantly port back out. You could also like beta warriors charge with it, a demon hunter's dash, any kind of movement they have to get to you, and then once they use that movement to get to you, boom, you port back to where you were. Then they have to use another movement to get to you, or maybe they don't have a movement and then you're out of there, right? So I like to kind of hold on to that a lot. Another thing that I didn't talk about when I was talking about defensives is Cauterizing Flame. I forgot to mention this, but Cauterizing Flame is a defensive, removes all poison, curse, bleed, and disease effects. This is particularly insane versus Assassination Rogue because it also removes Death Mark, which is their highest, you know, one of their biggest burst damage abilities. So it's kind of hard counters Assa Rogues, honestly. A lot of times in RBGs you're on offense, so you don't really get much value out of it. But if you ever are near your tank and they press a Death Mark, or even like on a Temple of Kamagu where the rogues are all playing Assa, or even in arena against an Assa Rogue, you definitely want to make sure that you try to cauterize the Death Mark instantaneously. It also gets rid of all the other bleeds as well. So it's insane value on Death Mark, but you know, it's also good against feral druids and stuff like that. And you have to spec into it to get Sleepwalk, so you're always going to have it. As far as crowd control goes, this class doesn't really have much. You know, it has the deep breath stun, which you want to hit as many people with it as possible, mostly because of the damage, but also the stun is good. A lot of times I'll try to stun on top of another stun, so that, you know, they're stunned so they can't move out of it, and then they get stunned again, DR, and take all the deep breath damage. There's also Sleepwalk, which is a 6-second sleep. In RBGs it's not that good, it usually breaks on damage. In arena it's pretty good because druids can't shapeshift out of it, so, and you're always moving around so much, it's kind of hard for druids specifically, or most healers, to avoid this. So it's pretty easy to land, and it doesn't usually break too often if they're out of range. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the CC. There's really not much. This class doesn't have a lot of hard CC. You can spec into Dream Catcher. This is a new honor talent they added. Not sure if it was this season or last season, but basically gives Sleepwalk no cooldown but an increased cast time. There is some times where I play this in solo shuffle if my teammate doesn't have any CC and I don't have any CC and my healer doesn't have any CC, because I might need it, right? We need CC. But most of the time you don't really want to play this talent too much, because like I said, there's just better CCs than Dreamcatcher. If you're playing with a Warlock, Fear is better. You're playing with Druid, Clone is better, but you can, it is an option, and it's good that they added that as an option. In addition to these, you also have a few other micro CCs, not really hard crowd control, but you have this knockback right here called Wing Buffet. You know, it's not a very big knockback, but you can spec into Walloping Blow, make it a little bit bigger, lower the cooldown. You also have the, I believe it's called Tail Swipe. This is just a knock in the air. It doesn't really knock them too far backwards, it just kind of knocks them in the air. But both of these can be used as little micro CCs to interrupt somebody when they have an aura mastery, like a Warlock has a wall or something like that. You know, both of these are little micro interrupts for them, so they're still very useful. They do have long cooldowns though, so don't rely on them too much, but it does definitely add to your cooldown of crowd control. You also have Swoop Up, which is an honor talent. Not really a crowd control either, but definitely does have its uses and can be very clutch in certain situations, both in arena and RBGs, particularly RBGs. on enemy FCs, or maybe on like Eye of the Storm or maps where you can knock, you can grip somebody to the edge and then use your wing buffet to knock them off. But yeah, that pretty much is it for the crowd control. Now we're going to talk about gearing and embellishments. First, let's take a look at my Mog real quick. I'm really proud and happy of the Mog I managed to create on Dragon. It's kind of hard to make this class look cool when they're in Dragon form, but hey, I think I pulled it off. You guys let me know in the comments if I did or not, but I think I look pretty good. I do say so myself. Got that Furious Tabard on, looking clean. Anyways, enough about the Mog. Let's talk about the stats. I've actually tested both Haste and Mastery. I thought Haste might be better since they changed Causality, but nope, it's still not better. Mastery is still king. 4-piece, you definitely want to play it. I tried playing without it at first, and it although it's not like insane, it's not mandatory, I do think 4-piece is better. You can choose to wear the pants or the gloves as the last piece. They both are kind of poop, but you know, take your pick at which one you want. The pants have more stats on them, so I kind of just chose gloves, but you know, either way, these are the 3 you want though, because these have good stats on them, particularly the shoulders and the helm. And the chest is okay, but it has high mastery, right? So you want to try to get mastery on every single piece of gear that you can. Haste is your second priority. Some people play crit, but in my opinion, I just think haste is a little bit better. For embellishments, in my opinion, there's 2 routes you can go here for embellishments. Maybe 3 routes. Last season I played the, let me show you, I think I have them in my bags. I played the Adapted Draco's Bracers and the Infurious Boots, which I might have gotten rid of. No, Infurious Boots right here. I played these 2 in tandem, and I'm honestly not sure what is better, these 2 or the Toxic Patch and the Toxic Boots, Venom Seed Boots. So this is what I'm playing now. And I do believe this is pretty good. You just have to make sure that Mastery is your highest stat so that it procs on Mastery. A lot of times Verse might be your highest stat if your gear isn't set up right. So try to make sure Mastery is your highest stat so it procs on Mastery. You can also opt to play just the Venom Boots without the patch, and then Adaptive Draco's Bracers, which is what I'm going to try soon when I can get enough sparks to update these and see if that one's better. But yeah, those are pretty much the only options. I don't think precog is good on Dev Evoker because realistically, what are you going to juke with, right? You're casting Disintegrate 90% of the time. That's a channeled ability, and if you're fake casting with that, you're just wasting a Disintegrate if they don't kick, right? And you know, your Essence is valuable and your Essence bursts are valuable. So, and also you have 4 different schools of magic, so getting kicked isn't that big of a deal, honestly. And a lot of times you have War Mastery anyways if you're playing Obsidian Scales. So I don't think precog is good. I have seen some play it, but generally I prefer not to play precog. I don't like it. I don't think it's necessary, and I just prefer the raw damage you get from having 2 damage embellishments instead. But yeah, just stack mastery to the roof. Maybe once you get to like 6,000 mastery, you start hitting those DRs, you can start playing some more haste or some even more crit. But I think the gear I have set up right now is pretty good. Probably the best you can get. Just make sure you don't go below 30% verse in PvP. I'm actually a little bit below right now, but probably going to change my gear, maybe my gems around a little bit just to get up to that 30% verse, because I don't think playing below 30% verse is very good in any bracket. A little too squishy for my taste. But yeah, mastery is king. Still, even after all the nerfs, mastery is still king. So get that mastery, and you'll see your damage shoot up like a rocket. Well, I think that pretty much wraps up the video here. If you guys liked the guide, or maybe even just my transmog, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment on the video. It actually helps me out a ton and costs you nothing but a little bit of your time. Also, we're live on Twitch every single day almost at twitch.tv/EasyGameL. Do a lot of high-rated RBGs there, a lot of viewer RBGs, and even some arena and solo shuffle content in there as well. And also, if you have any questions, you could just stop by the Twitch and ask me there. I'm gonna have a link to my Discord in the description below, so if you want to join the community, that's the place to be. I'll have that link in the description. And yeah, until next time, I will see you guys soon. Take care.